Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. My name is Amy Willard, and I am the Assistant Treasurer of the West Virginia Hope Scholarship Program for the West Virginia State Treasurer's Office. Thank you for joining us today. The purpose of today's webinar is to just give some background information on the West Virginia Hope Scholarship Program. So what is the Hope Scholarship Program? The Hope Scholarship Program is an education savings account program that gives parents an opportunity to build an individual learning experience that works best for their child. It gives financial assistance to students in grades K through 12, and they can use that financial assistance for tuition, homeschool curriculum, and a variety of other qualifying expenses allowed under the program. So when a student participates in the West Virginia Hope Scholarship Program, it's instead of attending West Virginia public school full-time. Essentially, the state funds that would have gone to the public school system to educate the student are placed into the ESA account for the parent to spend on the child's education. It is not a supplemental education program, so a child cannot attend public school full-time and also participate in the Hope Scholarship Program. We've had a lot of confusion about that from some families in the past. For students who do choose to participate in the Hope Scholarship, they fall under one of two different pathways. So first, they can be a participating non-public school student. So that's going to be a student who attends a non-public or private school that is signed up to participate as a school with the Hope Scholarship Program. The other pathway is the individualized instructional plan student. And so that's a student who's going to be educated using a customized educational experience that's going to take place at home or another location. So they're not enrolled in one of our participating schools. So students who attend a micro school or a learning pod are considered IIP students under the Hope Scholarship Program. And the majority of our virtual education programs, even some accredited virtual schools, are signed up to participate as just regular providers and not schools in our platform. And so a lot of those students, like attending Penn Foster or Celis or MIA Academy, those students are all considered IIP students as well. So the Hope Scholarship amount varies each year because it's tied to the amount of state aid funding per pupil that would be provided to the county boards of education for public school students. It's the statewide average. And so the amount for the current school year is a little over $5,200, and that's expected to rise to $5,435.62 for the 2026-2027 school year. So who's eligible for the Hope Scholarship? So to be eligible, you have to be a resident of the state of West Virginia. You have to have not graduated from high school, so you can't have completed a secondary education program. You have to be under 21 years of age, and that 21 years of age essentially is coming from the IDEA Act that allows students with disabilities to stay in public school until the age of 21. And so those students would be eligible to remain in the Hope Scholarship Program until age 21 if they have those same disabilities. Then there are some other statutory requirements. So first, a student who's going to be eligible to be enrolled in a kindergarten program, when they're first making their school choice decision for their child to enter kindergarten, a parent can go directly into the Hope Scholarship Program. And to be eligible for kindergarten, you have to be 5 years old by July 1st. These other two pathways for eligibility on this slide really are no longer relevant because of some changes coming into effect for 26-27, but I'll still go through them. A student who was enrolled in public school for the academic year, the full academic year immediately preceding the year for which the student is applying to participate in the Hope Scholarship. So students who are applying to participate in 26-27, if they've been in public school for all of 25-26, they would be eligible to apply for Hope. And then the third bullet point here is referring to the 45-day rule, which previously would allow students who move to West Virginia to go to public school for 45 days. And then if that was not a fit for them, they were able to go ahead and apply for the Hope Scholarship and remain enrolled in attending public school until we reached a decision on their application. But we also had a lot of existing private school and traditional homeschool students who utilize that 45-day pathway to become eligible for Hope early. But these last two, like I said, are no longer really important because for 26-27, the eligibility has expanded to include any student who's eligible to be enrolled in a West Virginia public school in grades K through 12. So all of those existing traditional homeschoolers and private school students who hadn't been eligible for the program since it started back in 22-23 are now going to be eligible to begin participating in 26-27. So that public school enrollment requirement will no longer, be something that we look at moving forward. So a common question that we receive is, what happens if my child doesn't turn 5 before July 1st? So the legislative rules for the program contain a provision that says that if there's a student who doesn't meet the age requirements, that they can go through the public school testing. So county boards of education are not statutorily required, but they are permitted by statute to have an early admission process for kindergartners in the public school system. And so they can set those rules, and it's county specific. And so if you are able to get your student approved for public kindergarten through a county board of education's public early entrance process, then the student can become eligible for the Hope Scholarship, earlier than they would otherwise normally be eligible. So what happens if the public school system says, no, your child isn't ready, or maybe your county doesn't have testing, or maybe they'll only test if, students are born in the month of July and your student was born in August, and so they're not even eligible for the testing in their county? Like, what happens if you want to go ahead and send your child for kindergarten anyway? So previously, under the old rules, if a student had done that, they would have had to have gone to public school as a first grader under the 45-day rule to become eligible for Hope. But that's no longer a requirement. So that next school year, they would be considered a first grader, but with the new expanded eligibility rules that start for the 26-27 school year, if a student did complete kindergarten a year early, it's not going to impact their eligibility when they apply that next year as a first grader, because they would be eligible to go to public school as a first grader, so therefore they would be eligible for Hope. Another common question that we get, where we've had some confusion from parents, is that do students have to requalify for Hope every year by returning to public school? And the answer to that is no, absolutely not. Once a student qualifies for the Hope Scholarship, he or she will remain eligible and can remain in the program until they graduate from high school, as long as they meet the following requirements. They have to submit their continued participation confirmation, or their CPC, in our Hope Scholarship portal annually to notify us that they wish to remain in the program. And then they also have to submit the required year-end annual academic reporting requirements to the County Board of Education each year. So as long as you tell us that you wish to remain in the program and then also submit the required academic reporting requirements, you're eligible to just remain in the program all the way through your child's elementary and secondary education until they graduate from high school. So what does the application process look like, and the notice of intent requirements? So the application windows, for new applicants, we accept them year-round, but the timing of submission of the original application for the program determines the amount of the Hope Scholarship received for that initial year of participation in the program. And for our existing students who wish to continue in the program, their CPC, or continued participation confirmation, is due June 15th annually. And all of our applications, whether it's a brand new application or a CPC, are submitted directly in the online platform. So this chart applies to our new students who are applying for 26-27, and the corresponding funding amounts are in the chart. So if you apply by June 15th, you get 100%. September 15th, 75%. November 30th is 50, and then February 28th is 25%. And then after February 28th, you would be applying for the subsequent school year. So again, this is only applicable for our new applicants because all of our CPCs are due by June 15th annually. So what happens if you miss submitting that CPC by the June 15th deadline? So if you fail to submit by that deadline, then your student is going to be applying basically as a new applicant, and they're going to fall into that lower funding category depending on when it is that you do apply for them. But they're still going to be eligible for the program under those expanded eligibility rules because they would be eligible to go to public school. And so they don't actually have to return to public school anymore like they would have in the past. They would just be eligible to apply and receive a reduced funding amount for that next school year. But if you do fail to submit your CPC by the deadline, then you would lose any carryover funds that are in your student's account. Those would return back to the state. So all Hope Scholarship applicants have to have a WEVIS ID number that's assigned by the public school system to complete a Hope Scholarship application. So if your student is currently attending public school, you should be able to locate that on their report card. They use it as their lunch number. It's the login for various different computer programs they might use. So chances are your student is going to have that number memorized and be able to tell it to you if you aren't able to locate it on one of their documents. But if you need a WEVIS ID number assigned for the very first time for your student, because they've been in private school or maybe they've been homeschooled or they're an incoming kindergarten student and they've never had any interaction with the public school system before, there's a new form called a WEVIS ID request form. And you would complete that form and you're going to email it to your local county board of education. Using some email addresses that were specifically created for families to communicate issues surrounding school choice programs like Hope Scholarship Program. And so we have a list of those email addresses on our website, and just look for the Hope County Board list on the website. So here's a picture of the WEVIS ID request form. There's a couple different sections. There's some basic information about your child, that information that would be needed to create a new WEVIS ID number in the WEVIS system. And then there's a series of questions to help determine if maybe your student has ever had an existing WEVIS ID number in the past. And so answering those questions is important because we don't want students to have duplicate WEVIS ID numbers. So, there's questions about charter schools. Did they ever do public school in the past? Did they ever receive public school services such as speech therapy while they were attending a private school? And then some traditional homeschool students, depending on when they submitted their traditional homeschool notice of intent, may already have a WEVIS number assigned in the system. And so, there's this series of questions. So please make sure you answer those questions to help the county boards of education find a number for your student if one would already exist. So once your student's Hope Scholarship application has been approved for the 26-27 school year, then we have to worry about submitting a notice of intent to participate in the Hope Scholarship Program to the superintendent of the County Board of Education of your county of residence to let that County Board of Ed know that your student will be participating in the program. We cannot fund your student's Hope Scholarship account until your notice of intent has been recorded in the WEVIS system by the County Board of Education. So it's very important that you get that notice of intent turned in. And we do have a sample notice of intent for the Hope Scholarship Program, and you can find it under Parent Forms on our website. And it's really important that you use this correct Hope Scholarship notice of intent. We've had a lot of issues in the past where families have mistakenly submitted a traditional homeschool notice of intent that they found from, a homeschool resource or organization. And so then the county board is unaware that the student is participating in HOPE, and they don't record that student as a HOPE student in the WEVA system. They record them as a traditional homeschooler in the WEVA system instead. And so that can cause funding delays for the student if the county's tracking your student as a traditional homeschooler instead of as a HOPE IIP student. So it's really important to use that correct notice of intent form. And so here's a picture of our sample notice of intent. Again, the section at the top, has some information about your student. Note that it has the school year that it's going to be effective. So if your student is in public school now and you're going to be participating for 26-27, it would be really important to, designate 26-27 as the school year, because submitting a notice of intent also serves as a notice to withdraw your child from public school. So if you put the wrong year on there and you put 25-26, they would think you are withdrawing your student now instead of for next school year. But we require that you tell us what grade level your student's going to be in for the school year that your HOPE participation is going to be effective. Information on where they can track you down if they need to get a hold of you to ask you any questions about the form, your email address, your contact information. Just some disclaimers saying that you have the legal rights and you're the custodial parent, things like that, to sign the form. And then this last section is kind of a new section. So if you are a traditional homeschooler who is moving to the HOPE Scholarship Program and you're no longer going to traditionally homeschool your student, then the homeschool laws require you to submit a notice of termination when you are going to cease doing traditional homeschool under Exemption C from compulsory attendance. And so to try to minimize the amount of paperwork for families and the amount of paperwork for county boards of education, we just added a section here. It's an optional section. Just ignore this if it doesn't apply to you. But if you are a traditional homeschool student who is moving over to the HOPE Scholarship Program now that your student is eligible, you would fill out this section, because then it is going to let the county know to go in and stop tracking your student as a traditional homeschool student as well, and helps you be in compliance with that statutory requirement to do the notice of termination. So you wait and submit your notice of intent to your county board of education until after your HOPE scholarship application has been found eligible. You do not want to submit it early. If your student, like I said earlier, is attending public school, it serves as that notice to withdraw, so that putting the correct school year is very important. We often get questions about NOIs for students who are attending a public charter school. So you do have to handle that slightly differently if your student is attending one of the public charter schools, even one of the virtual public charter schools here in West Virginia. So after your child's application is found eligible, you're going to need to submit a copy of your HOPE Scholarship NOI to both your county board of education of your county of residence, because that's what statute says, where you should be sending that notice of intent, because they're going to be tracking your student moving forward. But we also need you to submit a copy of that notice of intent to the charter school, because as I mentioned, it serves as a notice to withdraw your student from the public school. And so your child is currently attending public school, through the charter school system. So you need to submit it both. And so it's very important that you go ahead and also submit it to the charter school. But again, the year becomes very important on the form, because it is going to serve as that notice to withdraw your child. We'll get questions about whether you have to submit a notice of intent to the County Board of Education annually. And no, you do not. It should be a one-time requirement to submit a HOPE Scholarship notice of intent. However, if there's any information about your student that would need to be updated with the County Board of Education, So you move across the county, you get a new phone number, you have a new email address. You would want to go ahead and submit a revised notice of intent to the County Board of Education just so they can update all of the contact information that they have for you in the WEVA system. If you move counties, so if you're going to move from Kanawha County to Putnam County, for example, you have to send a HOPE notice of intent to your new county of residence. And then you also need to notify the county where you were originally living that was tracking your student that your student is going to now be tracked by the new county. So in my example, you would send a new notice of intent to Putnam County, but Kanawha County was your original county of residence. And so you would email that Kanawha County email and let them know that, you've moved and that you've sent your new notice of intent to Putnam County for them to start tracking your student. If you leave the program for any reason and then come back to the program at a later date, you will have to submit a new notice of intent to the County Board of Education at that point in time. So we have had families who've done HOPE and then gone back to public school for a while and then, wanted to come back to HOPE, and, they've had to submit a second notice of intent because, they've had that period of time where they were back in public school. So their first notice of intent was no longer valid. So at the end of year, there are some academic reporting requirements, and those depend on what type of pathway that your student is utilizing under the HOPE Scholarship Program. So for students who are attending a participating non-public school, the non-public school sends a list of all participating students, HOPE students from their school, to the applicable county superintendent based on the county of residence for the student. So we have some schools that may have kids attending from 3 or 4 different counties. So they'll send 3 or 4 different lists. They'll send, a big school in Kanawha County may have to send, a list to Kanawha, Putnam, Clay, maybe some Fayette kids making the drive, so they'll take care of sending it based on the county of residence, and that information of the county of residence is coming from the student's HOPE scholarship applications because you're listing on your application what county you live in. For the individualized instructional plan students, the parent or guardian has to submit the documentation to satisfy the statutory requirements. And there's 2 options. You can do nationally normed standardized tests of academic achievement, or a certified teacher can conduct a review of your student's academic work annually. That's commonly called a portfolio review. So this is an area where this is a little different for our traditional homeschoolers. So traditional homeschoolers have until June 30th to submit their academic progress requirements annually. But for HOPE Scholarship students on the IIP pathway, that year-end academic reporting requirements are due on June 8th annually. And so, because there has to be time for the county boards of education to get everything entered into the WEVA system for us to do some statutorily required checks to make sure that all of our HOPE kids have done that, turned in their academic progress. So June 8th is that deadline. We recommend that you submit your academic reporting documentation using those special email addresses created by the WVDE, the Department of Ed, for each county board of education to accept such documentation. And like I said, you can find that list on our website under the Parent Students tab. And so the reason that we recommend that you send it by email is it helps ensure that it makes it to the correct person at the county level. So if you try to send something by certified mail, or you hand deliver something to the county board of education, it's going to go through a receptionist or someone, at the front desk or in a mailroom somewhere, and they might not know who to route it to in the county board of education. But if you email it to that specific email address, then it's going to get into the hands of the correct person at the county board of education. It's also easy if something happens and, we contact you and say, hey, you didn't turn in your academic progress. you can have that copy of that sent email that shows that you turned it into the county. You can resend it to the county really quickly and say, hey, you didn't enter this. And you can, copy us at that point, and, then we can see, yeah, you did turn that in, and we can work with the County Board of Education to make sure that it gets entered. The counties are generally trying to be very responsive, trying to do a very good job at getting all of this information entered into the system. But you've got to understand, some of them have over 1,000 Hope Scholarship students that they're tracking and having to enter into the system each year. And so just with volume, one or two emails could get, lost in the shuffle. And so, just we always recommend that you submit it that way, just so it's easier to resolve if there is a problem. Some common questions that we get about the academic reporting requirements. So if you choose the nationally normed tests, what subjects must be tested? So you have to do reading, language, math, and then if there's a test available for your student's grade level, then you also have to do science and social studies. And so the when available for the student's grade level was added because some of those nationally normed tests don't have a science or social studies option for like kindergarten students. And so there were families who were wanting to do the testing, but like literally there was not a test at all that was available that met the requirements that also had science and social studies as an option. So, but if there is a test with science and social studies available, then you should be using a test for that grade level for your student. For the certified teacher reviews, is there a specific form that has to be used? So we created a sample academic progress review form that is recommended that families use for the satisfaction of this statutory requirement. And you can find it on our website under the parent student forms. Certified teachers can use alternative forms as long as their form contains all of the necessary information to meet the statutory requirements. But the certification language that the legislature put in the law, like that teacher is signing off on, is different in the Hope section of code than it is for a traditional homeschool student. So that traditional homeschool portfolio review form might not be accepted by a county board of education for a Hope Scholarship student just because of that difference in the certification language of what that teacher says that they are certifying. So, we strongly recommend using our form so you don't run into any issues, but a teacher can use a different form as long as it has all of the information that it's supposed to contain. In July each year, we compare the Hope Scholarship students who participated in the program during the year against the information that was recorded by the county boards of education in WEVIS. And so we are comparing using the WEVIS ID number, all of our Hope kids with the academic progress data. And so if you do not have academic progress data on file for your student at the beginning of July when we do this comparison, then we will send you a 45-day closeout letter via email notifying you that your account is going to be closed at the end of the 45-day period if your academic progress data is still not on file with the County Board of Education. If you get one of these emails, do not just ignore it. Be sure to follow up with us by email. Let us know, like, hey, I received this. Yeah, I just missed turning it in. I'm sending it to my county. Or, go ahead and follow up with your County Board of Education if you think that you were sent the letter in error. Like you sent it to the county, you've got your sent email. Like I said, go ahead. You need to follow up with the county and let them know that they've missed entering it into the WEVIS system. And so, please just do not ignore the email because it will result in your account being closed at the end of the 45 days if you still do not have academic progress on file for your student. Like I said, we at the end of that 45 days, we close it out. And just based on the timing of when all of this is happening, we put students at the point when we approve them for the next school year, like for our continuing students, we put students in a status called conditionally eligible. Like, yes, we've gotten your CPC, we've reviewed it, everything looks good. You're in conditionally eligible status until you've turned in that academic progress data, and then we will update your status to approved at that point. And students that are in approved status are going to be eligible to be funded with that first quarterly distribution on August 15th. If you still do not have academic progress on file, then and your balance and your status is still conditionally eligible, we will not fund your account for that August 15th quarterly funding distribution. You're going to have to wait. Even if you get it turned in, August 16th, then you're going to have to wait until our next available funding file for you to receive your students' funds for the year. So it's just really important that you go ahead and get everything turned in a timely manner. So a little bit about funding and qualified expenses. So scholarship funds are placed directly into a student's account or digital wallet in the online portal, assuming that the student's NOI is on file with the County Board of Education as required. So for our new students, our new applicants, we put those students in a status that's called eligible in our system. And then in July, when we're checking our continuing students' academic progress, we will also start checking to make sure that students' notice of intents are on file with the county boards of education. And we'll do updates to statuses to change them from eligible to approved. And so as long as your student's status is in approved status, then they will be eligible for funding with that first funding file. Historically, accounts were funded twice a year. You got half the money on August 15th and half on January 15th. But there was a change that passed during legislative session. So House Bill 5686 passed during session. It was signed by the governor, and it moves the Hope Scholarship Program to a quarterly funding model for students. So we'll put funds in their digital wallets, and you'll get a fourth of the money on August 15th, October 15th, January 15th, and April 15th annually. For students who are late complying with that notice of intent requirement, or if you're just a late applicant for the program and you're going to receive a lower funding amount, then funds are going to be placed in your student's online portal account as soon as possible. But we process funding monthly outside of those regular funding dates that are in statute. So you probably will be waiting until that next available monthly funding file. A common question that we get is what happens if you don't spend all of your students' Hope Scholarship funds before the end of the year? Like, are you going to lose that money? And the answer is no. Unspent Hope Scholarship funds carry over to the subsequent school year as long as your student continues participation in the program and satisfies all the academic reporting requirements. So as long as you submit your CPC and turn in your academic progress, then your money should roll over to the next school year. If your student's account is closed for any reason, then any unspent balance is returned to the state. So if your student would go back to public school for a little bit, then at that point, any money in their account is going to be closed out and returned back to the state. So scholarship funds can only be spent on qualifying expenses as defined in statute, legislative rule, or any items that have been authorized by the Hope Scholarship Board. So you can find a comprehensive list of qualifying expenses in our parent handbook on the Hope Scholarship website. We have also developed a list of non-qualifying or unallowable expenses that can be found on that website. There's a couple different places you can find it. It's under the Board of Directors page. You can also get to it from the Parent Students page on our website. That list of non-qualifying or unallowable expenses is not a comprehensive list. It is a list of things that are predominantly for personal use or have been deemed, non-educational or higher risk. And so they're not allowed, but that doesn't mean that if it's not on the list that it's allowable. You may try to purchase things that, just aren't age appropriate, or just for a variety of reasons could still be denied, even though we don't have it specifically on the list. Hope Scholarship funds must be spent directly with participating Hope Scholarship schools, service providers, or suppliers through our online portal. We have a very limited parent or guardian reimbursement policy. And so just because an item is a qualifying expense for the Hope Scholarship Program does not mean that it is eligible for reimbursement. It's very important for families to familiarize themselves with the reimbursement policy, to make sure that anything that they are purchasing out of pocket would qualify for reimbursement. Again, that reimbursement policy is on our website. You can find it both under our Board of Directors page and the Parent Students page. So a common question that we get, especially for families who are going to be participating for the first time in the Hope Scholarship Program, is, can I make purchases over the summer before my child's Hope Scholarship account is funded and then submit them for reimbursement in August? And the answer to that is no. Our policy clearly instructs board staff to deny reimbursement requests if the account holder purchases the item prior to the Hope Scholarship funds being in the student's Hope Scholarship online platform account, even if the item would have been considered for approval. So even though it might be curriculum, which is one of our things that is eligible for reimbursement, if you buy it before you have money in your account, then it would have to be denied. This same logic would also apply to purchases made at a time when funds wouldn't be available in your student's account. So maybe you've spent, you make a purchase out of pocket in December, but you've depleted all of the money in those first two quarterly funding distributions from August and October. And so your student doesn't have any money left, but instead of waiting until January when they have funds to make a purchase, you buy something in December, that would also get denied because you didn't have money in your account. So, you have to have the Hope Scholarship funds in your account prior to making the purchase. Think of it as you can't spend money that you don't have. And so you must have the Hope Scholarship funds available to cover the purchase before you make it out of pocket. Another common question that we get is the Hope Scholarship Program going to cover the cost of all expenses for my child's education? And the answer to that is not necessarily. To the extent that your child's education costs more than the Hope Scholarship amount, you're going to be responsible to pay for that, any excess costs out of pocket. In addition, there may be things that you want to purchase to educate your child that would not be considered a qualifying expense under the Hope Scholarship Program, even though you might argue that they have an educational benefit for your child. Just like in public school, students often have to make out-of-pocket purchases, there's going to be times where Hope Scholarship families are going to need to do the same. And so, I like to think of it as at least you're getting, most of your child's education covered, even if there are things that we can't let you purchase for your child with Hope funds. You're still getting the majority of the things that you would like to have for your student paid for with the funds. We do have multiple ways that you can spend Hope Scholarship funds through the portal. You can pay tuition and fees to a participating school or micro school. You can order services through our closed marketplace. Services could be, therapies, tutoring. We have a variety of different service providers available in the platform. Or you can order goods or commodities through the open TheoPay platform. And so that is one of the more common ways that our traditional homeschoolers spend funds. So TheoPay is our open marketplace where families can shop from various websites that have been whitelisted to participate with the Hope Scholarship Program. So to use TheoPay, you download a browser extension that you use with your internet browser, and it generally works best with Chrome. And so When you're shopping from a whitelisted vendor's website, you log into that TheoPay browser extension, which looks like a little puzzle piece before you start shopping. And then you add the items to your shopping cart as normal. And then before you would go to checkout, you would use the TheoPay extension to click on Scan Cart, and it checks the items that you have in your cart for program eligibility. And so it's going to tell you if you have any items that you're trying to purchase that would not be eligible for the program. So you're going to review the results. You would need to either remove any ineligible items from your cart or provide a justification if you think that eligibility determination is erroneous. And so, if you do think that something is getting rejected that should be allowed, then just type in that little justification and then you still submit it, and we would review that before making the purchase. But once all items display as approved or have that justification provided, you would click the submit button, but you do not check out on the website using your own payment mechanism. Like, you're not going to actually place the order yourself. You're just going to use the TheoPay browser extension to capture what it is that you're wanting to purchase. And then that submits your order to the Hope Scholarship fulfillment team, who reviews your order. They just make sure everything's eligible, and then they place an actual order with the vendor that gets shipped to your home or your designated shipping address that you've indicated in the system. A common question that we get regarding TheoPay is, can you be guaranteed sale prices or discounts when purchasing items through TheoPay? And so while we strive to place orders as quickly as possible after submission, we're unable to guarantee that a sales discount or a sales price is going to be available when your order is actually placed for fulfillment. It typically only comes into place during peak times, such as right after the quarterly funding dates, when thousands of families are all placing orders at the same time. And then sometimes, like if you're logged in as yourself, like you might be eligible, that vendor might be recognizing you as being eligible for something like a first responder discount or a teacher discount. But because we're shopping for those items on your behalf, then we may not be eligible for that discount when we're placing the purchase as Student First Technologies, places the order for you. If at the time we do go to process your order, we note a significant price difference from when you first submitted your cart, then the fulfillment team will contact you to make sure you still want the item at the higher price. And so, if it's a minor price difference, we're just going to go ahead and place the order and get the item, on its way to you. But if it is a significant one, the Hope Engagement Center will reach out to you just to make sure before placing the order at the higher price. We also get questions about returning items purchased with TheoPay. We do have a return process that's facilitated by the Hope Engagement Center. To submit a return request, you would complete a product return request form that's available on our website, and it would have there's a form that you fill out with all the information that they need to know about the item that you're trying to return. And then they're going to review that information, initiate the return with the vendor, and then send you the shipping label once it's been supplied by the vendor. But it is important to note that all returns are subject to the specific vendor's return policy. So if they have a 30-day return window and you have to have the item mailed by 30 days, then, you have to back that up in time to allow for, processing time of your product return request form, and for them to get you the shipping label and you to get everything submitted. So it's very important that you make sure you're in compliance with the specific vendor's return policy. All right, and then here is a slide with the contact information for the Hope Scholarship Engagement Center. If you have questions about the program, you can call them at 681-999-HOPE, or their email address is help@hopescholarshipwv.com. Then we also have some contact information for us here at the West Virginia State Treasurer's Office as we help administer the program. We can help with eligibility appeals, things like that, but basic questions should go to the Hope Engagement Center. But if you do need to reach us, our direct line is 304-340-5058. And our website address is hopescholarshipwv.com. All right, do we have any questions in the chat? Right, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. If you have any, please go ahead and type them now. Okay, okay. First time participant. Okay, so Liberty University Online Academy has not agreed to participate in the Hope Scholarship Program. We have made multiple attempts to reach out to Liberty University Online, and they have refused to participate with us. And so you cannot use Hope Scholarship funds to pay Liberty University Online. It's not eligible for reimbursement. So unfortunately, you cannot use your Hope funds to pay for that tuition. You could still apply for Hope if that's where your children want to attend, and then you could use those funds to meet their other academic needs. You would be able to, purchase their technology equipment, any tutoring, anything like that. But if they would be participating in Hope, they would still be an IIP student under the program, because I feel like if we did convince Liberty University Online to participate, they would want to be just a regular provider and not have to email all the county superintendents, all the kids enrolled in their school. So I think that if we were able to convince them, they would be IIP. So students who attend Liberty are IIP students. We will share a copy of the slides on our website. We will put those on the website along with the recording of the webinar. All right. Any other questions before we go? All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. So thank you guys for listening today. And if you do come up with any questions, please don't hesitate to contact the Hope Engagement Center or us at the State Treasurer's Office. Thank you.